Your kitchen is full of microplastics. Here's how to eat less of them. Notice here, this is written as a statement, is full of microplastics. Full meaning every area, every part of your kitchen. Now, often headlines may use language like may. Your kitchen may be to suggest there's a possibility. But in this case, they're stating it as a fact. Now, here is, so this is used to provide instructions. Here's how. After this, we need the infinitive. I might say to you, here's how to use the gerund verb. Here's how to use infinitives. I'm providing that as an instruction, and then I will give you the steps to follow. So here's how to eat less of them. Now, this is an important thing that native speakers do, and you can too to sound more advanced, is to replace nouns that have already been mentioned with the pronoun, them. Now, in this case, you would say less of and then the pronoun, them, because it's plural. If you repeated the noun, it would sound more basic, but you also would not use the preposition of. You would say, here's how to eat less microplastics, less of them. Don't worry about taking these notes. I summarize everything in a free lesson PDF. You can find the link in the description. Now let's keep reading together. Microplastics gush out of our taps and flake off cookware. So here we have two phrasal verbs, gush out of and flake off. Notice when you specify the noun, gush out of where, taps, so this is the object, you must use an additional preposition of. So gush out, microplastics gush out. But when you say where, gush out of our taps. And if something gushes out, it means it comes out quickly. So if you cut yourself, you might say the blood was gushing out. Hopefully that doesn't happen. Now, things like water out of a tap, if there's a leak in your tap, you can say, oh, the water was gushing out everywhere. Now notice I didn't use of because I didn't specify the object. So that's gush out of, come out quickly, large volume. Now, flake off cookware. If something flakes off, it means small, thin pieces come apart from the surface. So for example, for women who wear nail polish, one of the complaints is that it easily flakes off. So you paint your nails, it looks beautiful, and then the next day you have chips. You have areas where there's no nail polish because it flaked off. So paint can flake off a wall, your nails, and on cookware, you can imagine that small pieces of the surface can flake off. So a replacement would simply be come off. And here a replacement could be come out of our taps. And cookware is a collective noun, so you never add an S to it, but it's a group. So cookware as the category represents pots, pans, dishes that go into the oven. So oven safe dishes, not necessarily plates, which is also a dish. So that would be cookware, a collective. So do not add an S to cookware, but you can add an S to the individual items in that category, pots, pans, dishes. They, meaning microplastics, they find their way into the yolks of eggs. Okay, they find their way into. This simply means they enter, but if something finds their way into, it sounds like they enter secretly, sneakily, without permission. So more of a mysterious way of entering. They find their way into the yolks of eggs. Okay, what did you notice about my pronunciation? Into the yolk of egg. The yolks of eggs. There's no L. It's totally silent. So this means it is a silent letter. It's there for spelling. Don't ask me why, but do not say it. So when you pronounce it, just pretend it's not there. Yolk, just like joke, but a yolk. Yolks of eggs. So yolk, of course, is the yellow part in the center of the egg. The rest is called the whites. So you have the yolk and you have the whites. And deep into meat. So deep into sounds like the middle of, not the outer area, the middle. And deep into meat and vegetables. Vegetables. So vegetables. Notice that pronunciation. This is silent. Vegetables. There's 3 sounds, and this is an unstressed ta, and this is bulls, vegetables. But if we take certain steps, we can eat less of them. So you already know less of them being microplastics. Are you enjoying this lesson? If you are, then I want to tell you about the Finally Fluent Academy. This is my premium training program where we study native English speakers from TV, movies, YouTube, and the news so you can improve your listening skills of fast English, expand your vocabulary with natural expressions, and learn advanced grammar easily. Plus, you'll have me as your personal coach. You can look in the description for the link to learn more, or you can go to my website and click on Finally Fluent Academy. Now let's continue with our lesson. You can't see them. Remember, them is microplastics, but they are there. Are there simply means they exist. Exist in all the previous areas they mentioned, but they are there. Hundreds of minuscule, extremely tiny. So you might say, oh, I have a stain on my dress. And then someone else can be like, oh, don't worry, it's minuscule. Meaning it's so tiny, no one will even notice. It's minuscule. Minuscule particles of plastic lurking in your steak. Steak just represents an item of food that is commonly eaten. So you can say lurking in your food. Here, they're just making it more vivid, your steak, something that is commonly eaten in North America and elsewhere. So lurking, so the verb is to lurk. And if something is lurking, it means that it's trying to hide, and its existence is threatening or potentially dangerous. So you hear this word a lot in movies, books, especially ones that have some suspense or a thriller, a drama, a horror movie. Maybe you'll hear something like there was a man lurking in the alley. So there's a man trying to be hidden in the alley, but his presence is threatening or dangerous. So you can imagine how that could make an interesting movie or book. And notice the pronunciation, lurking. Let's keep reading. These interlopers in our food. Okay, an interloper is someone or something unwanted or uninvited in a particular area. So there might be an interloper in your organization or even in your family. For example, there's some person that doesn't belong in your family, but is trying to be there actively. So in this case, these microplastics, so these interlopers, it represents the microplastics that are unwanted, shouldn't be there, but are trying to be there. These interlopers in our food are microplastics and nanoplastics, particles of less than 5 millimeters, or between 1 and 1,000 nanometers, respectively. I'll be honest, I don't know what a nanometer is. I'm going to guess, and then I will confirm that it's smaller than a millimeter, because nano is tiny. So let me confirm. Yes, they are extremely small. In fact, they're thousands of times smaller than a millimeter, so drastically smaller. Let's keep reading. But how do they, the microplastics and nanoplastics, but how do they get into our food? So get into, you could just use enter, get into our food. And in a world infused with bits of plastic, so in a world infused with bits of plastic, it just means in a world where plastic is ubiquitous, plastic is everywhere. So in a world infused with bits of plastic, what can we do to reduce exposure in our diets? So exposure to the plastics. If you were to include the noun, the plastics, you would need the preposition to, exposure to something. So if you have a mild phobia, maybe you're slightly scared of spiders, maybe even just the thought of that. But if you get small amounts of exposure to spiders, so exposure to something, maybe even just starting with looking at an image of it, not necessarily in person. I've heard of that as a therapy for mild phobias. Let's review these sentences. Maybe if you were exposed. Okay, so here our verb is to be conjugated in a hypothetical. If you were is hypothetical, were for all subjects. And then expose functions as the adjective. So to be exposed. Maybe if you were exposed, you still need that preposition to spiders in a safe environment, it would help. Maybe. Now, in this case, exposure is a noun. So I'll write that there so you have it as well. This is the noun form. So exposure is a thing. So maybe exposure, the thing, to spiders, but you still need to. Maybe exposure to spiders in a safe environment would help. So maybe something would help. So all of this represents the something. So maybe something would help. Let's keep reading. If you take a closer look around your kitchen. Okay, so here, take a look and then closer. So if you're researching or reviewing something or trying to solve a problem, someone might encourage you, take a closer look at this study. Take a closer look at this website. Review it. If you take a closer look around your kitchen, around meaning you're not at something specific. So if I say take a closer look at this study, but around an entire room, around your kitchen being the room, you'll start to recognize where microplastics enter our meals. Now, using a phrase we learned previously in the article, you could say where microplastics find their way, because it's plural, their way into our meals. Remember, enter our meals indirectly, almost secretly. They're not invited, find their way into. It adds more drama, more meaning than simply saying enter, which sounds quite neutral. Enter our meals. They flake off the spatula. Now you know exactly what this means. Imagine you get some egg yolk on your spatula. So your spatula is the kitchen utensil you use to flip an egg or take an egg out of the frying pan, which is cookware. So spatula is a kitchen utensil, and then frying pan is cookware. So you have egg yolk on your spatula and you leave it there overnight. In the morning, it's going to be dried on, and you could go like this and pieces of yolk would flake off. So small, thin pieces would come off, would leave the spatula. So but in this case, they is microplastics, not egg yolk. They flake off the spatula you use to cook breakfast, leak from the plastic water bottle. So leak means if a liquid leaves unintentionally. So we often use this with a water leak. So you have your pipe and then small drops or a lot of water's gushing out, but small drops. You could say, oh, I think the pipe is leaking. That's the verb, to leak. Or you could say, I think there's a leak in the pipe. So a leak is the noun. But in this case, it's the verb, leak from your plastic water bottle. You put in your child's backpack and float in the cup of tea on your desk. So float means it's on the surface. And I do have a cup of tea on my desk. Let's hope there aren't microplastics floating in it. And float in the cup of tea on your desk. They're also buried deep within the food we eat. So here, notice the pronunciation, buried. Just like a strawberry, raspberry, buried, buried, eed. So this is a long E sound, buried, eed, buried, buried. They're also buried deep within the foods we eat, from hamburgers to honey. So here, you use from to for a range. We're open from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., from to. And they chose two very distinct foods to just show that it's a wide range, from hamburgers to honey. Food that has nothing in common, to show that they're everywhere. They're ubiquitous. Let's keep reading. Once you start looking for them, looking for microplastics, the exposure points. So an exposure point is a point, a time, a situation where you can be exposed, which means where you can experience that thing. So you can be exposed to the sun, of course. So if you're at the beach, you can think of the different exposure points, the points where you will be exposed to the sun, pretty much everywhere, except under an umbrella or inside. The exposure points for microplastics can quickly feel overwhelming. So here, notice you have the ing form. You would say, I feel overwhelmed. Whelmed. Notice that's the ed form. But something feels overwhelming, which means the something is what causes you to feel overwhelmed. So you would say, I feel overwhelmed because dealing with microplastics, something is overwhelming. Let's keep reading. But importantly, it is also possible to make changes to reduce the amount of microplastics we are exposed to in our kitchens. Okay, so here we have the verb plus adjective combo that we already reviewed. So to be, now are, because it's we in the present, we are exposed. And then you already learned that you need the preposition to when you specify the something or somewhere we are exposed to in our kitchens. So actually here, the something has already been identified. It was identified before. The amount of microplastics we are exposed. If you just ended it there, imagine in our kitchens does not exist, okay? So get rid of in our kitchens, just remove it. So we have the amount of microplastics we are exposed. That's grammatically incorrect because the thing, the object has been identified. It's the amount of microplastics. It just happened to come before, which can be done in English sentence structure and is done in more formal writing or speaking. Now, because that object has been identified, you must grammatically include to. So even if in our kitchen was not there, you have to say the amount of microplastics we are exposed to. Just like you might say the amount of music we listen to. You can't say the amount of music we listen. You can say the amount of TV we watch, because watch doesn't take a preposition, but listen to your teacher, listen to this beautiful song, the amount of music we listen to. So that's why you would still need to in this case and in the example I gave. Let's keep reading. One researcher urges against a knee-jerk reaction. Okay, to urge is to strongly suggest, advise, or encourage. So I might say, I suggest you download the PDF and review everything we learned today. I urge you to download the PDF and review everything we learned today. Urge sounds a lot stronger. It's a strong suggestion. So when you want someone to pay attention, use the word urge. Well, use it with a native speaker who understands the difference, but now you do too. One researcher urges against, so against because we're going away from, urges against a knee-jerk reaction. A knee-jerk reaction is a very quick and emotional reaction. So you don't take the time to think about how you decide. You just decide and act. So if someone cuts you off in traffic, a knee-jerk reaction would be to honk your horn and yell at the person, because if you thought about it rationally, you probably would decide it's not worth getting so upset over. But your knee-jerk reaction may be one that you later feel bad about. So a knee-jerk reaction of throwing away all your plastic kitchen utensils and appliances. Okay, so after you read this article, if you are just completely overwhelmed, you're freaked out, you go into your kitchen, you throw everything out that contains plastic, that might have been a knee-jerk reaction. You acted too quickly without considering all the information, so you can make a more rational